Welcome to Muddled Minds. It's been a while since I've uploaded a video, but that's just because it's hard to find time to talk to yourself about, well, questions that are quite muddling to the mind. Recently, I read an article, and it was about simulations, in the fact that if we were able to create a simulation that actually, represented a different form of potentially what we see now in this universe, if it goes down to stuff like politics, or, how the way certain government officials do certain things, or how we interact with each other on a daily basis, if one way is better than another, certain laws and shit, but that's one form of simulations that they plan on trying to use. It's like we're actually living a simulation right now. Of course, there's no really way to confirm or deny that because, it's just absurd to a lot of people. But, the fact that the universe is so big, so vast, never ending, yet we don't understand hardly any of it. The basic laws of physics that we do understand seem to abide by certain laws, like the speed of light. Nothing can go faster than the speed of light. That there is gravity, and the larger the mass a body has, the greater the gravity is, and the more it can pull on other objects that are nearby. And, of course, relativity. But those simulations, those people that did suffer in that simulation to prove that the simulation was bad and it would suffer if this scenario happened, who's to say that simulation doesn't exist in a plane dimension where we are not quite able to comprehend because we created it because it's a sub-dimension of the dimension that we live in this universe, because it's a sub-universe of this universe, because this universe is probably a sub-universe of another universe. And without actually knowing what universe is actually the universe you live in, you don't know which universe you actually know is the actual true universe. Just like every dimension that we believe is true is not necessarily every dimension that exists. Doesn't mean that we don't know what is right and what is wrong, but we do know that everything around us we believe to be true. And so without actually knowing what actually we can understand, we have to first know and identify that everything we see has the ability to be wrong, because we don't really understand everything in enough detail to know how everything works in this universe and every universe beyond, because everything that we see to be true we just understand by observation, and repetitive observation. If something happens more than once, it must be true, because there's consistencies going on. But just like the fact that we don't really understand how things work, we could also not really understand the fact that simulations that we create, just like the whole, multi-universe thing, where if you make a decision and every decision you make, if we do have free will, obviously, creates another universe, basically, and that universe leads out to those different decisions. So who's to say a simulation is very similar in that aspect? Like, you have a universe, you create it. Maybe that simulation, like I said before, only lasts 5 minutes, but that 5 minutes could be equal to our billions and billions and billions of years that we think this universe has survived and lived on from so long, just because it has to start from somewhere, and maybe it starts from the same point, but it expands outward into a different direction to different scenarios, just like it's a copy of the same thing, but it's in a different universe. So we got the whole multiverse theory coming in. But then that questions yourself, what's actually real? Are those people going to suffer? Do they actually exist? Do they have any awareness of their surroundings and their environments? We have no way to actually say if they do or not, because the thing is, we're not even sure how aware we are. We think that we're intelligent. Obviously, a lot of people joke if aliens came to Earth, or if they even seen that Earth was here, and they seen that the footage and stuff we broadcast and all the wars and shit we do, and they're like, is this planet even worth visiting? Because they like to go and visit planets that have intelligent life there. They'd be like, I don't see no intelligent life. Let's just pass by that place. I mean, shit. What the fuck is that crap? But, we believe to be true what we want to be believed to be true. That's just how humans work. If we don't think something is true, we basically just freaking deny it. And, well, like a lot of people, they bitch about it and try to push their views, which if they are right or wrong, it don't matter, because to them, they are right. And that's where all the arguments come and all the fighting and all the shit that goes back and forth that screws with everything, and it goes into the big politics, and politics is just fucked. I mean, they should just freaking all work together, be a world as one, and get shit together, because, freaking the way these governments work, it's just crap these days. But, of course, these simulations can tell us different scenarios in which better governments would work better together, different situations in which people will survive better. The be a lower poverty line that we'd be able to figure out, and a lot of people would be happier. The people that are really happy won't be as happy, but the people that are really sad will be moderately sad. So it'll be better overall. Of course, to determine the happiness of everybody is not really something you can actually determine, because happiness, how do you rate happiness? You may be happy one day, you may be sad the next day. You may be depressed this week, you may be not depressed the week after that. There's no way to consistently label who is happy, who is not happy, how to determine exactly how that works over a widespread time period. Because you have to take an average of an average of an average to figure out how often we actually figure out and know when we feel like we're happy or not. Because a lot of times it's a hit of a situation. You may be having a bad day, and as that day goes on, all of a sudden at the end of the day, something happens. It's just like a spark, and it's just like you feel better. Everything is going back in place. You feel great, and everything's good. Now you're happy. You spend most of the day sad, most of the day depressed, most of the day mad, most of the day whatever, and then all of a sudden you're happy. So who's to say that the suffering that we create upon a simulated group of people in a simulated universe that's simulated, potentially similar to ours, potentially different, in a scenario that could potentially happen in this universe, in this place that we call our home, on Earth, in this current dimensional realm of this multiverse, we don't know if we just created another one, or we're just looking at another universe that potentially already exists because it was already created by us once before, and yet we were just reaching over and taking an overview of how this effect would be there, even though the effect was already created before we even created it. So yes, they suffered. Is it ethically right to allow them to suffer? That is up to each and every individual person, because everybody believes their own thing. I don't believe in any gods. If you believe in a god, you're going to say it's morally wrong. Maybe if you don't believe in God, you might say the same thing. It all depends on your point of view. The way I see it, everybody's going to suffer. Everybody suffers. So if a simulation does cause people to suffer, and it's a another universe, it was always meant to be there, to be created, and to suffer, because everything that is created will be created and is created once it is to be created. As in, once we create something, it will exist with or without our input, because it will live on beyond the point that we interact with it. Because that's, if there's a multiverse, when we create another universe, even if we just look at it for a short 5-minute time period of how this affects it, all the time before and after that period will be existing and existed before we even had any input into it. So we didn't necessarily affect it in any major, large scale effect at all on that universe, on that scenario, on that group of people. And so because of that, really, I would think it's ethically completely fine to have simulations of certain small scenarios, because these certain small scenarios are only certain small clips of different points of people's lives and groups of people on planets or new different universes that we really don't have much interaction with. And that small amount of thing might drastically change the lives of those people. But it's a simulation. And I'm not denying the simulation isn't real, because who says this simulation isn't real? You never know. But the thing you do know is the fact that each simulation has a subsequent simulation inside of it. Because we, as a whole, are creators, just as someone probably created us. If we're in a simulation. If we're in a simulation. But that's for you to decide exactly where we're at. If this universe is the only universe, or if it's just a string off of a multi-universe somewhere else that are very, very similar to ours. And each universe that came off of our universe, we may have created, may not have created. They could have been created by the other multi-universes, or we could have created it, or somebody could have created us. Just like every subsequent universe within our universe, when we create simulations or create long-term effects that potentially affect us and others, we could, in the end, have multiple versions of the same situation. And without actually knowing which is correct and which is wrong, there's no way to determine how it can ethically be right or wrong to create a set of people into their suffering, because we don't know the results of the test of the simulation until after the simulation has run. So you can't ethically be like, no, we can't run a simulation on this scenario, because you don't know in the end if it did create more suffering than it created more happiness or a better effect in the end. And the only way to know that is to run the simulation. So in the end, run the simulation. Thanks for watching Metal Minds. I'm going to try to get a few more videos more recently. Shit's getting back together. It's a new year. Slowly getting back into it. But, you know, there's a lot that goes on up there. But not much time that I spend getting it out there. Keep it real.